All right. Good morning, everybody. We are going to go ahead and get started today. All right. This presentation is brought to you by the California State Parks Off-Highway Motor Vehicle Recreation Division. It is intended for educational purposes only, and the content is subject to change. Applicants and grantees must consult the regulations related to their project year. Please contact your grant administrator if you have any questions. Contact info can be found at ohv.parks.ca.gov by clicking grants at the top of the page and then grants contacts in the submenu. You can also email the grants team at ohv.grants@parks.ca.gov. Next slide, please. All right. Welcome to today's session focused on the project agreements process. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Matt Womand, who is our compliance team supervisor. Matt, the floor is yours.
Right. Hello and welcome everybody to the project agreement virtual training. This is our fourth training the grants unit has offered this year. Our training is available on the grants and resources page in the training and resources section. As Deb said, my name is Matt Womand and I'm the compliance supervisor in the grants unit. Today, my team and I will provide you with all the information you will need about the project agreement process. The course aims to make sure you feel comfortable and understand the project agreement process, as it can take some time and has multiple steps along the way where your agency will need to accomplish a few action items to receive your fully executed project agreement. That process can go relatively fast, and I'm using state standards here. So 4 to 6 weeks, and you're thinking, what? That's fast? Trust me, for the state, that's actually considered pretty fast. Or slow, depending on how quickly you get to us the required information. This training is welcome to anybody, but it will benefit any agency that anticipates receiving any grant funding from the Grants and Cooperative Agreements program. Before we start, let's get a few logistics out of the way. This virtual training is 2 hours and is designed to be interactive. The content that we cover is definitely not going to cover all 2 hours. We're really leaving time for you guys to ask questions, live demonstration. And so we really want you to, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. Please ask comments. We're not going to use question slides. We're pretty much just as we go. If you have a question, please feel free to interact with us. Raise your hand, and we'll look to address it before we move to the next slide. This training is being recorded and will be posted on a grants resource page. So if you missed something or you can't recall what was said, you can go back and get that information. And next slide, please. All right, so I want to introduce our 4-member compliance team, who will also be your speakers for today's training. When I say the compliance member's name, they will turn on their cameras so you can see their lovely faces and know who you're going to be interacting with going forward. Our first up is Josh. He is going to be our compliance member assigned to counties. So if you are a county, he'll be your assigned compliance member. Josh is also fancy right now. He is doing some double duty. He is also a grant administrator at this time. We just recently hired Josh into our unit, and so we're in the transition of moving him over, and we're in the process of hiring someone, his backfill at this time. So Josh has got a heavy workload. He's doing double duty at this time. Our next staff member is Ethan Mathis, and Ethan is responsible for cities and counties, so you're assigned to agencies there. Go ahead and wave and say hi. There it is. There's Ethan down there. Next up is Nancy Seichow. She will be our compliance member assigned to United States Forest Service and United States Forest Service Patrol Districts. So she'll be handling both those responsibilities there. And our last but not least is Sean Soria, and he will be handling Bureau of Land Management, districts, and other federal agencies. All right, so that's our compliance team. And then the next up is, this is where a little history about what the grants unit has as a compliance team and why we have one in the first place. So the grant compliance unit was created after Senate Bill 249 was passed in 2017. This bill is important because it established the Grants and Cooperative Agreements program as a permanent program, no longer having a sunset, which is huge because prior to that, we would sunset every 5 to 10 years, and you never knew if the program was going to be continuing or not. So pass this legislation, we are able to be permanent. When legislators were evaluating this program during that time, they noticed that the grant administrators handled all aspects of the grant. So that was from reviewing and awarding applications, creating the project agreements, processing payment requests, and closing out the projects. They wanted to separate who was awarding and creating the contracts and who was approving payment requests and distributing the awarded state funds. This is where compliance came in. The compliance unit is responsible for leading the application review teams, creating project agreements, and doing compliance check on all projects before closeout. The unit is responsible for all project activities while it is inactive. An easy way to look at this is before the project start date and after the project end date. That's where compliance comes in. Anytime when the project is considered active and when it's currently going, that's where the grant administrators handle all responsibilities and will be your primary point of contact. We do our best each year for each grant cycle to rotate assignments so a compliance member will not have the same agency type the following grant cycles. They will create your agency's project agreements and be your primary point of contact until the project is fully executed. And next slide, please. All right, so appeal process. The focus of the slide is to go over what happens if the division receives an appeal or not. We will not be going over how to submit the process of an appeal. Regulations 4917 of the Grants and Cooperative Agreements Program covers the appeal process. Today is the last day of the 30-day appeal period to submit an appeal to the division. If your agency is considering submitting an appeal, it needs to be submitted by close of business today. All right, so what happens if the division receives an appeal? If an appeal is received, all project type awards are not finalized until the resolution of any appeals. This is for all project types, not just the category that was received the appeal. So if you are in ground ops and we got an appeal in ground ops, it holds up the appeals for all project types. So law enforcement can't move with their project agreements and so on. There are multiple levels in the appeals process, so we can't really ballpark how long it's going to take. Last year, it was a few weeks. The year before that, the appeal was not resolved until mid-October. So it just all depends on how the appeal is going. If an appeal is successful within our project type, your agency's received intent to award for that might be changed because of that appeal. It could affect your award, especially if your agency score is closer to the cut line. If your agency gets an appeal, it won't affect your project proposed start date. You're probably thinking, I want to start sooner rather than later. An appeal is going to hold me back. So let's say, suppose your agency is anticipating a start date of September 7th, 2023, which could be the first possible start date. In that case, the division will backdate your project performance start date even after the appeal is finished. So even if the appeal finishes in October, we'll still give you the start date that you want on September 7th. That's fine. We just backdate it. Your agency just can't receive any payment request reimbursement or advance funds until the process is resolved, and then the project is fully executed. All right. So what happens if we don't receive any appeals? Final awards will be posted on OHMVR Division's website tomorrow, September 7th, 2023. The compliance unit will start the project agreement process by distributing the applicant's acceptance emails the week of September 11th. The division has yet to receive any appeals at this time. Of course, that could change. It all depends. Right now, we are anticipating sending the applicant's acceptance emails next week, unless we do get an appeal later today. Now I will pass the baton to Nancy, the first who goes over the first steps of the project agreement process, including the applicant's acceptance emails and possible application adjustments in OLGA. Next slide, please, and take it away, Nancy.
All right, thank you, Matt. So like Matt mentioned, so after the appeal period has ended and the appeal has been resolved, so within a week, like Matt said, if there's no appeal, next week the authorized representative and the project administrator listed on that final application should receive an applicant's acceptance email from a compliance unit member if your project has been awarded. So either from me, Josh, Ethan, or Sean. So in that email, you should receive a attached copy of the agency factual finding. list of the project has been awarded with the request amount and the final award amount and instruction on what to do next. So after sending the email, if the project required changes in OLGA, a compliance unit officer will release your application in OLGA. So once they do that, it kind of triggers an automatic email stating that you need to make a changes in the application. So you may receive 2 emails. Once you receive that email, your project are now open in OLGA to make those changes. The email will come from OLGA, but it will say from Jen Grading, our acting grants manager. Please don't respond to that email. If you do have any questions, so please contact your assigned compliance unit officer to get a quicker response. Next slide, please.
For that, and Nancy, how does the system generate the emails? Who does it send it to? Like, how do they get the contact information for that?
So whoever is listed as the authorized representative and the project administrator listed on the final application, that's where they get the context from.
All right, so that brings up a key information just for if you're not the contact person that was listed in your final application, please reach out to your compliance member that you saw associated earlier, or just the OHV info line, grants email, letting us know who that contact is, because we are going to go what's based off that final application. And that's just also a note for next year. If you guys copy your application, when you guys are in the creating process, please make sure to update the contact information in the general criteria for the primary contacts for authorized representative and project administrator, because that's who we really function off of contacting for the steps process going forward. All right, next slide, please. So on your screen, we have an example of the applicant's acceptance email. Oh, we have a hand raised. I will get to that in 1 second. So I can't see the hand. There it is. Dave Rowan, what you got for me? You can unmute yourself, sir.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that you emphasized that during this process, we contact you guys, not our grant administrator, but the compliance guys. Right.
Dave, I'm going to give you you get a tip next time I see you. Yes, you're giving a great tip of information. Yes, we are the primary contacts. We will definitely emphasize that throughout. Until your project is fully executed, you'll be working with the compliance unit. Now, if you do have any active grants that are current going on, yes, you want to speak to the grant administrator and they'll handle everything that's going on. But in this process, the project agreement process, you'll be working with compliance. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody understood that, because we've got a lot of new people here and things have changed from the last couple of years.
One thing that talking about change, it was stated that Jen Grady is now our acting, and the reason why Jen Grady is acting is Sixto Fernandez, our longtime grants manager since I want to say about 2008, officially retired. So August 31st was his last date. So we are in the process of filling his position, and Jen is the acting grants manager at this time. All right. So next up on the garage, what's on the slide is this is your applicant's acceptance email. This will be what it was sent to you from your assigned CU member, and it has basic information here. It's going to be telling you right here, this is where we're looking at as your project information. It's going to give you your project number, project title. It's also going to cover your request amount, award amount. There's a blank column here, as you see, in start date that's highlighted. We will go over that later in our presentation. Nancy's going to cover that of why that's important, what we're looking to have in that information. Then going to give you your contact that this is Nancy. So this is examples. This is Nancy, a letter that she's sending us. And then it's going to go over next steps. It's going to talk about maybe having to do adjustments with OLGA. And a big part in here is the last part is contact the division. These steps that you guys have to do here, putting the start date, updating OLGA, really, we don't know what's happening on your end until you contact us, letting us know the information that we require. So it's really important that once you have a start date, once you have your contact made the changes in OLGA, that you reap back out to compliance so that we can move to the next steps. All right, next slide, please.
Yep, perfect. So here's an example of the emails from OLGA. Again, you only receive this email if your project required changes in OLGA. The language found in this email is very similar to the email that Matt just showed you guys. However, the email that Matt just showed is more in depth and has additional stuff so you need to take. Again, Jen would be really happy to receive all your emails, but if you have any questions, to please contact the OHV Grants inbox or your compliance unit member. Next slide, please.
All right, so now we are going to go over factual findings. So a part of that acceptance email, they will have the attachment of the factual findings. These were also sent to you once the intent to awards were posted as well. So after you read your email, you're going to verify the information is correct. The next step is you're reviewing your factual findings. The big question we always get is, what do the factual findings actually mean? The division can provide factual finding comments to any sections of the application. So any application sections open to us for provide a factual finding comment. For all areas except for the evaluation criteria, so that could be in the general or your project specific, the division provides a comment when the item is in question, needs to be changed from what was submitted. So we had a question about it, it has to be changed. The reason for that change is maybe it's not allowable within the programming regulations, it needs clarification, and or it needs to be changed for the reason the review team provided. The factual finding language in the evaluation criteria sections inform you the applicant of points, deductions or additions to a specific question for what the applicant scored themselves when they submitted their final application. The language will explain why your agency did not get the points received or additional got deductions or received additional points. Once the awards are finalized, the factual findings language cannot be changed. The time for that is during the appeal period. So if you have a question, you're looking to change something on the factual findings, that's what the appeal period is. You're allowed to challenge it at that time. Once it's finalized, it's set. Until the appeal period is completed, the division cannot go into detail about the common language. We only can reiterate what the language says. We cannot explain what you could have done differently or what the team was looking for with this question. But once the appeals are over, we can discuss the comment languages more in depth and provide insight into your response. During your administrative site visits, your assigned grant administrator will go over your factual findings and answer any questions you may have. Of course, you can ask your assigned compliance officer as well. I want to emphasize that reviewing the factual findings is important when writing the next year's grant. The factual findings provide you information on responses where points were deducted or funds were removed. Next grant cycle, you can look to improve on your application by taking information that was received from your factual finding comments. Now we will go over the factual findings document. Later in the presentation, we will complete a live demonstration of how to make those changes in OLGA. The division provides a comment in all sections except the evaluation sections, criteria section, when division wants the applicant to change a specific item within their application. All comments start by telling the applicant the issue and why the applicant is getting a comment. But there are some keys to recognize when the language we provide. The most common language is that the comment instructs what the applicant needs to do: deduct, move, etc. You do exactly what the division is asking and what to ensure that the line item total matches what the factual finding line item final total is. So usually it has at the last sentence, revised line item total is such and such. You want your line item in OLGA to match that total. Nancy will cover this in a bit and kind of show you how that works and how you kind of work with the numbers to make sure you get that right number that we're looking for. The contingent line item comment. So the division gives this comment when we're unsure whether the line item is eligible within the program regulations. Division thinks it is, so they don't want to remove it completely. We don't want to deduct it. We have a feeling that it is eligible, but they're not 100% sure. So they're asking for clarification. If clarification is provided, the line item will be allowable. If no clarification is provided or the line item is not eligible after clarification is received, then those funds are frozen and cannot be spent or reallocated. We do not change your award. So at this point, the award is finalized. We're not going to go and change that, but we're just going to freeze the funds, meaning that they can't be reallocated to anything else and you can't spend those funds. So at the end of the project, we should see those dollars coming back to the state. Now, there's also a comment that we use if awarded. We use this, the division is looking for the applicant to provide more clarification or clean up the application because something that was written is confusing or is outdated. We see this a lot with agencies that copy applications. They usually respond to comments from the prior year and they don't update their notes section. And so they say response to comment and it says something that they did previously, but that's not applicable this year. So we know the line item is eligible. So we don't want to make it a contingent. We don't want to remove it. So we don't freeze the funds. We're just looking for you to kind of clean up the application. And what's great is usually the next year, if it's cleaned up, you won't see a similar prelim comment to have a question about what was listed. Now we're going to kind of go over the factual findings and kind of show you what I'm talking about going over a live one. So hold on. And here, there, and there. All right. So here is a factual finding comment that was received by an agency. They had no comments from the division. So when you see no change, what that's really describing is there's no change to that application. We're not asking you to do anything to that section. And that's really key to note is that we are going to release back your application to make changes, but you only can make changes to areas that received a comment from division for a factual finding comment. If there is no change, so all these sections that are in the application, we should not be seeing any changes. Compliance does go through and look to make sure that nothing has changed besides what language we gave you permission to change. If we do see anything that is different, we're going to ask you to revert it back to what is at the final. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Troublemaker again here. So sometimes in your comments, like like when you make comments like this in the project cost estimate, and you'll say not not described in project description, but you have no change in project description. Well, how do I adjust that when you tell me that it's not listed or it doesn't say so in the project description, but you want me to change my PCE, you know? So if the PCE says it's not listed in your project description, but you tell me I got no change in my project description, how do I address that issue?
So that sounds like more of a, and we could definitely work with your compliance member if it's something in the factual findings. Off the top of my head, that really sounds to me like a prelim comment. That's usually when we give those sections a comment in regards to it's a change. We're noticing something in the project description or the background section or deliverable, and then how does that affect the project cost estimate? That's usually when we try to provide those changes, those type of comments. When it comes to factual findings, we're usually very specific in what we're looking for. We usually have a flow to it. So first, it's kind of a description of what the issue is, and then the act that goes with it. We don't really try to keep it very broad because we need to have the applicant make specific changes too. Now, if you do have a comment like that, please we'll discuss with the compliance member and they will help guide you through that conversation of how to fix it. But off the top of my head, that's I'm thinking of a prelim comment towards the factual findings. Right here, you can kind of see in regards to a listed here. So the first thing is stated is highlighted in blue. This is kind of what they noticed as the issue. Applicants' notes are inconsistent on the number of permanent bathroom facilities within the quantity and the line item. So they noticed that the notes description doesn't match the quantity that's there. And so what they're asking is, if awarded, applicant must revise the notes description and quantity to match. And the reason why is it makes it a lot easier for this type of change for the grant administrator. They really use the project estimates and the line items within it as a guide for them in managing the grant going forward. And so they just want consistency. So that's why we're giving a comment if awarded. We're not saying that the line item is ineligible. We're not trying to freeze the funds for, let's say for some reason this change didn't happen and it got by through compliance to update it. We're just kind of like giving you the guide, hey, look, let's clean this up so that it's consistent. And then let's say next year you copied it, it would have the same consistency kind of copying over to the next year. So this is kind of one example of that if awarded. The next line underneath it is contingent line item. So this is an example of where the grants team or the review team that read it didn't get the information they needed to ensure that it passed regulation requirements. So the contingent line item goes, applicant is reminded equipment purchased through the grants program is not eligible as a use fee. That's the actual stated reg. So they just stated reg right back at the in the factual findings going, hey, look, we're not sure if this has it. If funded, so this if funded, applicant must provide clarification if equipment was acquired to the grants program. So they did receive funding awarded. They're on the intent to award. We've now awarded the project. What we're looking for you to go is back into OLGA and update the notes to state that, was this purchased with grant funds? Was it not purchased with grant funds? And then that will allow us to determine if it's an eligible item or not. And so that's one where we can't have the ambiguity. The regs specifically tell us that it is or is not to receive funding. And so we put it as a contingent line item. So if everything's all good, you can use the funds as planned. If not, those funds will be frozen as we discussed earlier. The next one and the last one is right here, preventative maintenance and repairs. Applicant removed maintenance and towing trailer from hauling from their line item. However, applicant did not remove associated cost. So they had a prelim comment that asked them to remove the language. They did remove the language, but unfortunately, when they made that change, they didn't adjust the cost that went along with it. So the review team is really just telling you the next is the methodology for how we got to the total on the bottom. So we provide you, they use this, the applicant had seven preventative maintenance and repair items in the preliminary application. Removing one reduces the line item by 14%. So we had to have a theory to how we came to this total. So we were providing that information. For you, in regards to right now when you're making the change, that really is, this information is really irrelevant. It's just telling you how we got our total. The highlighted part's what we need you to do. So we're telling you to deduct $1,050 from grant, and this is your new line item total. So that's what Nancy is going to show in the live demonstration of how that works. But overall, the factual findings are really just kind of giving you for the next step, which is making changes in OLGA. We're trying to make it as simple as possible for you guys to make the change and get to the total that we need, because what ends up happening is any changes from deductions get us to our final award total. So that grant request of for this agency would be $223,664. That matches the award amount. So the idea is when you adjust your changes in OLGA, you're going to have that final total on the bottom match your new award amount. I know I just covered a lot and just threw a lot of information at you. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Yep, Dave, what do you got for me?
Back again. So when you guys tell us to do that, sometimes we have like request and match, right? So we might have a line item and maybe we're requesting $2,000 on something and we're going to match $500. And you adjust that. We have to adjust that both ways, because if we take this off, it changes our match. You know, if we deduct $1,050 from our grant, that changes our match amounts on what we're going to do and how things are, and we can only match so much, right? So is that where we contact compliance and we work through that if there's an issue? Because I've had a big headaches trying to do this over the years.
So you bring up a great point. We've tried to learn as we go throughout this process. This year with the review teams, we calculated the deductions for you for grant and match. So when deductions were made, so the review teams are always told, and this year we really focused on it, if there's a line item that have a deduction, you always look to take for the match first, if possible, to make sure that it still stays above the requirement that they're stating in their application. So if you stated 26%, we are making sure if we're taking off excess match is what we're doing. We're not taking off anything to get below of what you requested or stated in your application is what you're going to provide in the project. Because if you stated 26%, you're getting points for that rated match. So in the past, we used to just say take off a certain amount. This year, we really got it focused to where we're going to tell you to take off grant and we're going to tell you to take off match. And we've already kind of put the math in for you so that you guys don't have to try to figure it out at this end. Because yes, in the past, we've had some issues where it took a lot of time to kind of get to that total and you had to kind of play with both sides of it in order to find that number. So the magic number that we're looking for. So this year, the comments are really designed to just tell you, deduct from grant, deduct from match. It might have both as well, where we're taking you to take off this much from grant and this much from match. So again, if you have any questions, the compliance person will be able to help you out through that process, and that's what we're here for. So just call us and we can definitely help you out to the OLGA stuff.
But adjusting this stuff will change your grant award.
It will not change the grant award or the match percentage. We've already gone through the math on our end before we put these factual findings comments out to ensure that the changes that we have won't affect what's been stated.
So if I say I applied for a grant and I asked for $64,000 in an education grant, and we adjusted this and it came back, if we had adjustments in here and you were taking off $1,000 off of that, then your award would only be for $63,000.
Yes.
Take into account these changes.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. So these factual findings, Yeah, no worries. The factual findings come in exactly to what the awards amount were. So usually if you have a revised total, this revised total is going to match what your award amount. Now, let's say the example that you had an application that didn't have any issues. The review team didn't make any deductions or ask you to make any changes. You're not going to have a revised total here. You're going to have no change, or you might have something up here where this is the only comment where it's asking you to make like a notes change. Then there's not going to be any change difference on the award amount side. You're not going to see this bottom here of total changes because the award is good from a dollar perspective from what you submitted on your final application. So the only time you're going to see this bottom piece where you see grant request revised total, you also can see a match revised total down there as well, is when the actual review team, the division, is asking you to deduct funds from grant or match. Any other questions before we kind of get to the next spot in this presentation? All right. And I want to go back to the view I had before. Nope, not that view. All right, there's that. There we go. Sorry, clicked the wrong button, and now I'm trying to get it to get to my screen. Go, 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 go. And there it is. Nancy, take it away.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. So after reviewing your factual finding, the next step is amending your agency application, OLGA. This will only pertain if the factual finding states to do so. And if you have law enforcement project where the award amount is more than the requested amount, kind of like an example that you see on the screen right now, you would need to add additional funding to any line item in OLGA. Matt, do you have a question? Go
Yes,
ahead.
I do. I see here when you look at it, you have a requested amount and award amount. The award amount is actually higher than requested amount. How did that happen?
Very great question. So because the all grants fund expended for law enforcement project must be allocated for all law enforcement projects, meaning no funds can be left over for law enforcement project. And because all law enforcement project guaranteed funds, any extra funds are allocated among the law enforcement project. Therefore, like some law enforcement project will have extra fund. It may be good things for some, and it may not be for others. But hope that answered your question, Matt.
It is. And so, for example, this year, you actually saw it with our Forest Service agencies, the patrol districts. They actually, since we had 1.8 million funding that was available to them, they came a little under that 1.8 million, and we are required to award all funds. And so those funds were reallocated back to the grantees, and they're getting a comment that states pretty much that they're going to have to increase line items. Now, they can put those additional funds to any line item that is improved within their project cost estimate. You do not have the green light to just make up something brand new and start, hey, cool, I got this much money, I'm going to buy something that's a brand new that we didn't see. So, but you are able to add those funds to any line item that's currently within your project cost estimate. So it can go to staff, and go to materials and supplies, or if you had a piece of equipment, you can add those funds to those areas.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. Can the remove line item? Question, Matt.
Sorry.
Can they remove amounts or stuff on their application in OLGA, or can they only add?
You can you pretty much you're talking about for the law enforcement or just in general?
In general, yeah.
So you can always remove a line item, but that doesn't mean that you are moving that funding somewhere else. Pretty much you're only doing exactly what the comments are telling you to do, and so what the factual finding comment is. So stay strictly to what the comments are. And the reason why is that's what you built your project cost estimate with. If you want to do something and adjust like that, you're going to do that when the reallocation happens. So let's say that you know that you're not going to use this funding later. You do a reallocation when the project is active. That is what you work with your grant administrator on. So at that point, you would then go, hey, you know what? We're not going to spend it as much. We're going to have a line item staff. This person's not here this year where we projected to have them. They're not. You will do a reallocation at that point to move those funds to a different area. But that is all happening when the project is active. Right now, you're just only doing the changes that are based off the factual finding comment.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. So, kind of like, if you have any questions regarding your project cost estimate, your factual finding, again, contact us and we'd be happy to help. So once all the project with changes has been made in OLGA, you must save validate, and resubmit. It's very important that you save. If you don't save, you're not able to validate, and making sure to resubmit. One common mistakes a lot of folks kind of do is submitting a general criteria application. If you do, you're going to receive an error message, and all you have to do is kind of ignore the error message. So only submit the project with changes. And for example, the example that Matt showed with the ground operations, you only submit that. So don't submit your general criteria. And then the next step is notifying us. It's very important because we handle multiple projects and OLGA doesn't let us know when you have submitted your application. Emailing us kind of help us execute the agency project agreement faster, and also project review kind of based on when we receive the notification. And then once we receive that notification, your compliance member will review your updated project and will contact you if additional revision is needed. Next slide, please.
One thing before I switch over is just really emphasizing, let your compliance member know when you submit your application to OLGA. It does not send us a message. And so if you don't send to us, it's just when we do catch it and notice. And each the compliance members are handling over 40 projects that they're doing project agreements for. So really communicate to us, let us know that it's done, shoot us an email so that they can move forward and progress to the next step, because you kind of hit these holding patterns if you don't move forward with it. All right, so start date. After you review your factual findings and amend your application, only if it pertains to your project, of course, the next step is letting us know when you want your start date for your projects that are listed in the email. So the division will provide date ranges for the start date. It is usually at the end of the appeal period to January 1st of next year. No projects can overlap any same project type. So for example, if you currently have an active ground operations project, you cannot, and you were awarded another ground operations project, those two projects can't run concurrently. One must finish before the other one must start. So check the active project agreements for the end date. For example, my current G22 education project performance period end date is September 30th of 2023. My G23 education project can start no time before September 30th, but it can start any time after from October 1st, 2003 to January 1st of 2024. So yeah, you're allowed to push it back if you want. You're not obligated to start on October 1st, which is right after. But just note, if you do push that date back where you're not starting right after the last one ended, you do not have any grant funds to pay for any activities that are going on during that time. To find the project agreement, you can go to the OLGA homepage and select Review Project Agreement on the left side of the menu, or copy and save the link into your internet browser. My question is, sorry, Nancy, do you have a question for me?
Yes, I do have a question for you. So what happened if it is September 24, 2023, and my start date is September 2nd, 2023? Can I work on my project?
So you're saying that your start date's on the 24th and you're trying to do work for?
So my start date is September 3rd, but
Okay.
hey, it is September 24th right now. Can I
Yes.
work on my project?
Yes. So you were allowed to do anything up to September 3rd. And so backdating all your information, we will reimburse any expenses that occurred from September 3rd on to the project performance end date, even if your project agreement isn't fully executed yet.
And great question. I actually have another question.
Yes.
What happened if I decided to change my start date? Can I change my start date after if I execute my project agreement?
All right. So there's a couple things. We've had this happen a couple times. So let's say you email your compliance member, you select, I want to start on October 1st, and then you go through the project agreement process, and then you want to change it afterwards. At that point, once it's fully executed, we do have to go forward in regards to that date on that agreement, but we can amend it. So there is an amendment process, but you will work with your grant administrator on kind of doing any changes to the date once it's fully executed. So do note, if you do send us a date and we start working through that agreement, if you want to change it before you put your signature on it, that's easy. Changing it then, you just send it to the compliance member. We edit the date there. Now, once it's signed by your authorized representative and the grants manager, then that goes into a different process, and it does take some more time to adjust those dates at that point. So please make sure when you submit a date that it's the date that you're looking for. And if you do change your mind, let us know, and then we can resubmit, send you a project agreement, and then you sign at that point.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Nancy.
That's a very common question we get.
Yes. All right, so next slide. So next is up with OLGA tutorial.
Perfect. So now Matt and I are going to go over a few action items on a factual finding in OLGA. Just make sure all changes must be made in OLGA. Other forms such as emailing us will not be acceptable. If you email us of the changes, we're just going to tell you to go ahead and go in OLGA and make those changes. So what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and share my screen. While I share my screen, does anybody have any questions for Matt?
Have confidence, Nancy. You can answer these questions as well.
Trying to multitask here. See if I can share my screen. It's thinking. Oh, no. Let's see here. Oh no, where did it go? Okay, let me share my different screen here. So while we wait, Matt, do you want to start a song or something? Just kidding.
So there's one thing that my wife has told me not to do, and singing is in that box. Like I could share it, but trust me, it would definitely change your it might shut off your day a little bit. So
Oh, that's not that bad.
now
Okay,
dance moves I got, sing moves I don't. So.
All right. Sounds like my my screen is working now. So
No six-toe jokes?
Yes, so compliance, we are on the boring side. Our slides don't have pictures. We don't have the one-liner jokes. We're definitely going to have to prep for the upcoming workshop because Sixto was the one that provided all the entertainment and all the dad's jokes or the OHV dad joke versions that he had. So we're getting our material ready and make sure we'll be prepared for the upcoming workshop this upcoming January.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, unfortunately, no jokes here. We're boring. But perfect. So as you guys can see on my screen here, I'm not sure if it's like the left side for you guys or is it my left side, but here's the factual finding as what Matt kind of went over earlier. And on the right side is OLGA, so our online grants application. Same place where you worked and submit your grants application. If you need access with your user self, definitely contact your compliance unit. We can definitely help you guys with that. So kind of like what Matt talked about earlier, the most common action item in a factual finding is adding that information or need clarification in the project cost estimate section. All you really need to do is add the additional information in the notes section in OLGA. Like for example, here it says, if funded, applicants must provide clarification if equipment is acquired through the grants program. Because this project is awarded, and here's an example, what you need to do is kind of go into OLGA and make those changes. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys, and hopefully OLGA works. So this is a test site because I'm showing you a demo, but it looks very similar to the live site here. So once you log in, you go on the bottom of the screen and click on OLGA menu and enter grants application. And select the correct program or grant year, so it would be G23. And from here, remember to click go, that's very important. And now list all the projects that you have submitted. From here, it is important that you enter the right or the correct project. The step that I'll be showing you will be the same step if you're making changes in OLGA for other project types, such as law enforcement, planning, or education and safety. But for this example, this comment is for a ground operation here. All right, so as you see, this comment is under ground operation GL1. So I'm going to enter GL1. And then I'm gonna press OK for the little notes. And for this example, I'm just gonna press cancel start the application. Perfect. So now where I need to go is go to the right tab to figure out which tab. As you can see how this comment here is under project cost estimate right here. So now what I need to do is go to the cost estimate tab, which is right here in OLGA. I'm gonna click on here. And right here, it shows staff. So you actually need to go to the correct category. For this example, it's the equipment use expense. So there's a few ways that you can get to that page. You can click on this navigation button here, and it'll take you to that page. The easiest way, and I rather work smarter and harder, is by clicking this show tree button here. And from here, click on equipment use expense and press OK. So always click on the show tree, definitely makes things a little bit faster on there. So once I click there, it should get you the equipment use expenses. And according to this factual finding, it says equipment use expense number 2 and 4. And unfortunately, there's no like number where you have to say 1, 2, but you have to count. So 1, 2 here. And then I'm gonna click on the note icon here, right on the note column here. And that is where you need to add your notes here. So I went ahead and already did that notes here. The equipment is now purchased through the grants program. Just make sure when you add that on there, press OK. And then I'll do the same for number 4 here. Again, the note icon here. And then I'm just gonna re-add it on here so I can save it on there. Once you put your information according to your factual finding, always make sure you click save. Perfect. And it's good to go. And you can validate it now or later. It's completely up to you. If you validate it, it says no error. So you're all good to go with that one. Perfect. And that's how you make changes in the notes section. Matt, do you want to add any information or would you like me to show something else before I go to the making changes in the line item?
No, just the big thing to emphasize is that especially for contingent, we do need to see that notes change, because if they don't, if it doesn't have that clarification, the grant administrator will look to put those funds on hold because they're not seeing what we need to verify for clarification if it is a allowable expense or not in our program.
Yeah, perfect. And thanks, Matt. And if you want to see the whole PDF version, you can click this button and it'll give you like a PDF version, especially some folks who like to see as a whole instead of in OLGA, so you can click this feature on here. One thing I actually do want to go over that's not on this factual finding is where to find the project description. Again, let's say if you have an example on a list of project deliverable, you just go to the project description tab here, just here, and then again, click on show tree, and now it will be and list deliverable. That's kind of one of the common section comments we have, and that's where you would add it on there. All right, so the next step, the fun part, is making changes on the line item. So if I scroll here as an example. All right, so I'm not going to go each one of them, kind of Matt went over, but I want to show you the changes on the line item where a lot of folks probably have to make those changes in the project cost estimate. So for this one, again, this example here would be under the project cost estimate section under ground operation GO2. So then I would go to GO2 application. And then I'm just going to press cancel for start the application. Cost estimate tab. Again, and this one is telling me to go to equipment use expense. So show tree. Equipment use expense. Press OK. Perfect. So I'm not going to go over all this comment here, but what Matt mentioned earlier, kind of the action item. So this action item is telling me to deduct 274 from grants, and the revised total for list items now grant is 2,216 and matches 0. So I'm gonna make those changes to equipment 6. You can't count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but this one has a title, which just makes it really easy. So I'll just go find the title here, which is here, and then make those changes. This part gets a little tricky, and this is where you kind of use your little math that you learned. So according to here, it says that the rate, the total is 4,980, and the new total match is 2,216. And because this one here says quantity is 2, so what I'm gonna have to do is divide 216 divided by 2 to give me the the rate of 1,108. So what I'm going to do is make that change. 1,108. And very important, once you put in the rates, click out of it to give you see that new grand total now. So now it shows you 2,216, which is, according to your factual finding, 216. Now what you're going to do is, now you're able to put it in a grant request. And this is where kind of what Dave was talking about with the match. You might have to split it, but for this factual finding, it's just 216 and matches $0. So I'm just going to copy this to make things a little bit faster.
And that goes also, if there was a match component here, that match, instead of saying match 0, would say match what we'd want it to be specifically, to try to make sure that you're getting the total that we got on our end, which generated the award and also stayed within your factual finding. And so we try to give as much instruction as we can. If something is off it, and what does happen sometimes is if a total is not entered correctly and you do try to hit validate, it's going to pop an error for your award. The match might be off, indirect might be off, and the award total won't. But that's what compliance will check for. For some reason, your award is less than what or more, compliance will work with you in trying to get that total. So we're definitely here to kind of help you out. My math skills are bad, so I definitely use calculator. Calculator is my savior of all things. But we will definitely try to look to get you where you need to be. I know the one that's kind of hard sometimes is when it comes to staffing. They're trying to get to that exact number. Usually we keep the quantity where it is, and we manipulate the rate a little bit.
And I'll show them that. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll show them a little bit of it. Especially that's a comment one I'll show after this one. Like Matt said, it does get a little confusing with the quantity and the rate on here. Perfect. Thanks, Matt. So once, like I said, the match is saved, and you always remember to click save. Very important to click save. Like Matt mentioned earlier, you can validate now. If you validate now, actually I'm gonna get that error message because I haven't made all those changes to that final amount yet. So that's why I'm saying, hey, it's more than this. So there's a few ways you can do this. You can validate as you go, or you can wait until the end. So since we did this one, I'm ahead and go to the next one here. Very simple. Like I said, the action item here, deduct 1,004, revised item is 3,950, and this one is going to be under the others category. Again, you can click on this navigation button to get to where you go, or click on the show tree. So others number 1, preventative maintenance warrant. So this is one here. The action that's telling us to do is deduct $1,050. Because this quantity is 1, this one makes it really easy. Since I don't have to divide it by 2 or by the quantity, I can go ahead and just change the rate here. This was a really simple one. And then again, make sure you click out of it to give you the full grand total. And then just like that. And I'll click save.
Actually, Nancy, you put in the total. We want our total to be 3,950.
Oh, yes. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that is very important. Don't do what I do. So there we go. I did a deduction. Good catch. Good catch. Yes. There we go.
So in that situation, if you actually did do it, it's going to show that you're going to have less funds than your actual award amount. And so that's where, if you can't figure what it is, that's where compliance will kind of review the notes and see what's kind of going on and be a resource to you.
Yes, and don't make the mistake I did. And if I was to validate it, see, no error found because I kind of did all the action item it is. So before I actually show you where to validate and resubmit it again, I kind of want to go over where it is check your revised grant total on here. So you can click on PDF to get it or your version, but one way to actually check to see your revised total grant request is by clicking the project cost summary. And then here we go, and you scroll down. So your project cost revised total should match what's on here on the summary page.
And you're going to note that there doesn't have on the factual findings what the match request is. And so the 82,190, the reason why that's not listed is we didn't make any changes to it. So it shouldn't have any change to what was originally submitted in your final application. So again, we only provide revised totals for anything that we made some type of action item that we needed you to make an adjustment on.
Yep. Perfect. All right. So, and I actually want to kind of go over stuff, kind of what Matt mentioned, because common question we usually get every year. Right. So usually what happened is that we will divide the new revised total with the quantity. But because what Matt mentioned earlier, the rate usually never change on the staff. So on here, what you need to do is get the revised total, the new grant total, divided by the rate to get the quantity. And one thing I do kind of want to mention to note is that do not round the number as a whole. Uh, do add the few digits after the decimal points in OLGA. Actually, I'm going to show you an example here. Let me pull up a calculator to kind of explain what I mean, because I'm a visual person, so I can show it. So, so let's say an example here on assistant say the total was 79,000. You got a factual finding asking you to, hey, the new grant total is $70,000. So I'll put the new grant amount. I'm going to divide this by 38, which is the rate. And it's 1,842 and a few decimal here. So as I mentioned earlier, and I actually want to show you guys this, if I was to change the quantity to a whole, let's say 842. See how it's 69,996. So it's important to actually add a few decimals on here. See, $70,000. So you might have to add, a few decimals after a few or up to 4 decimals, as long as it gives you that exact total on there. Perfect. All right, Matt, do you want to add anything off before we move on to the next slide?
Just one thing to know is the awards we do round to the nearest dollar. So for example, when you're working the math, it has to be to the nearest dollar. Don't have cents and change to it. We'll round up and down, but we try to keep it to the nearest dollar on our possible end as much as possible. So
perfect. Yeah, perfect. And thanks. So before I move on, I just want to kind of go over making sure to save, validate, and resubmit again, and notifying us once you do that. Oh, actually, I'm going to cancel this because I don't want to save this one because that's just an example. But once you're ready to submit your application, can go ahead and validate here. So there's no error, and now you can go ahead and submit it. To submit, it's actually a different location in OLGA, which a lot of folks forget, or kind of like, why it's not in the same place? I know it's OLGA. To actually submit your application, you have to go to OLGA menu. Not enter grants application, but grants application preview. And then go ahead and click on here and make sure you unclick general application requirement, because that's what I mentioned earlier. If you do submit this, you would get an error message, and then you just go ahead and submit it. Because this is the demo, I'm not go ahead and show that step, but that's where you would submit your application, and then notify us when once you do that, so we can go ahead and review your application.
Really emphasize, only submit the applications that we sent back to you. If you do try submitting anything that was currently valid, you also see the stage difference too. The stage won't allow you to submit, and so it's going to pop you an error on that. I know a lot of you guys use the method where the drop downs up top. So it would be grant application is your level 2, and grant application preview is your level 3. So I know that's another formatting that some people try to prefer to use, is use the drop down method. So that's definitely to get to that one. I'm not sure why OLGA was set up this way to have 2 different places to submit. Maybe it's just like a double check to make sure they get it right, but it does cause some confusion on that end.
Right, perfect. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and then next presenter is next.
All right. So before Sean will delve into the project agreement, oh, let me turn my camera on here. Sorry about that. Before Sean delves into the project agreement process / timeline, I'd like to clarify the rationale for including this topic, especially considering most of the steps don't directly involve you as the grantee. We are addressing this because we believe it's crucial for you to understand that this process comprises numerous steps, and each one requires a certain amount of time. Your prompt involvement with tasks you are responsible for will expedite the progress for your compliance officer completing each step and ultimately bringing you closer to receiving your fully executed project agreement and getting your grant funds. So it's essential to note that if you fail to fulfill your part, the entire process will be put on hold. And so as Sean kind of goes over this, you'll kind of see exactly where these kind of stops are. And also, you just have to remember that our compliance officers are handling a lot of different project agreements. So it's kind of the stuff that comes in first is the stuff they kind of see. If you're kind of sitting in the back and you come in later, you kind of have to go waiting in line. So just making sure you do your part and get your stuff in as quickly as you can. All right, Sean, take it away.
All right, thank you, Matt, for the introduction. So starting with the project agreement process, the beginning stages of the project agreement starts with the applicant's acceptance email being sent to the applicant. So once received by the applicant, they will either send their acceptance or denial of the approved final award in that email. If the applicant accepts the final award, the applicant must respond to the email with the start and end date of the project performance period. If the applicant declines the final award, an email will need to be sent stating that you are denying the award for said grant cycle, and this denial email will be in our records for reference. So moving forward, with the acceptance email, the applicant will have a chance to make changes in OLGA if the changes are requested or needed for the application. If no changes are required by the division, we will then move on to the project agreement review, in which the compliance unit will break down and write the full project agreement language, creating the actual project agreement contract. A compliance unit officer will then send the project agreement to management for review and approval. Internally, we have 2 management levels of approval before the project agreement language is actually approved. So once we receive the approved language from management, a compliance officer will then verify that all required documents are on file and meet regulation requirements. This also includes verification that your agency is not on This also includes verification that your agency is not on the not good standing list before moving forward with the final signatures from both parties. I would like to mention that the compliance unit officer, Ethan, will cover those documents in the next slide. So once all the documents are verified, the compliance unit officer will send out to the applicant's authorized representative the approved project agreement for final signatures via DocuSign. However, we do understand that some agencies do not use DocuSign and require wet signature due to obtaining something like the governing body resolution. And this is allowed as long as we receive the project agreement signed and returned back via email. Once the signed project agreement is received by the agency, a compliance unit officer will then send over to management the project agreement for that final signature. Once we receive that final signature, we will send back a signed copy via email to the respective agency for record keeping, as well as filing the agreement on our end. So at this stage, a compliance officer will begin creating a purchase order in FISCAL so the applicant can begin advancement or reimbursement with their resigned grant administrator. This process involves the grant management, accounting, and the state controller's office all approving the purchase order before a payment request can be processed. So congratulations, you have now learned the complete process of finalizing a project agreement and what to expect. Now, expect the question that is on most people's mind is how long does this process typically take? Typically, this process takes around 4 to 6 weeks, but it really depends on the grantee and how fast you do your part. So please let us know if you have any questions or need any clarification on any of the previous mentioned steps, as we will be more than happy to go more in depth. Thank you. And next slide, please.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Sean. So,
Yeah, no
as we've covered so far, there are a lot of steps to get a project agreement executed. So, I'm going to review some important areas that may hold up your agreement from getting executed. So the way we kind of see it is the agreement process is essentially two main steps for staff to execute an agreement. Step one involves the acceptance email and fulfilling factual finding requirements that we covered earlier. And step two involves completion of step one and staff finalizing the application review and ultimately drafting the project agreement. All right, so with that said, what are some areas that will hold up compliance staff from drafting the project agreement? First, as you've heard previously, we need to have your preferred agreement start date. This will be provided directly responding to the division acceptance email with your start date. And you recall that this start date cannot overlap an existing agreement performance period of a similar project type. We'll also need applicants to update the project cost estimate and our project description language. But of course, we've also covered this. You only need to do these updates if there are areas of your application that are identified as needing update in the factual findings. So again, some quick reminders. Remember that an applicant cannot make any changes to the PCE or project description that are not noted in the factual findings. Only make changes that are noted per division's comments. And for our law enforcement project friends, they will need to make changes to their PCE per the factual findings. And I think we covered this. This could possibly include having to reduce their grant request amount, or in some cases, they may be increasing their grant request amount.
Hey,
Okay,
Ethan,
so now,
I have a question
yeah,
for you.
yes.
Let's say I was a law enforcement agency. I didn't receive any factual finding comments, but because I'm a local and it's non-competitive, everybody's got a deduction. So now everybody's projects are decreased from what they were requested. I have no specifics of how I'm supposed to make those adjustments. What do I do in those kind of situations?
So yeah, we don't provide guidance as you said, but generally, you just want to get to, if it's a lowering your grant ask, you just want to reduce one of the items, and not to be prescriptive here, but something I know I have seen oftentimes is those staff charges can be typically raised or lowered pretty easily. So you might want to look to those staffing things to either increase or decrease your grant amount as prescribed by the total grant award. Thanks for the question, Matt. Okay, so once the application is updated in OLGA, I know you've heard this before, we need to be notified that you've made those changes and resubmit the application in OLGA. Again, email the compliance member who sent that acceptance email that the application updates are complete. Otherwise, we just don't know that you've completed that. And one last requirement that we're gonna need is, and this is only for our applicants that are new to the program, these applicants will need to submit what we call a standard 204 with the division. This is essentially a form that gives the division information about an agency that is used for our accounting purposes. And if you are one of those folks that are new to the program, we'll reach out to you and give you the form to fill out. At this time, are there any questions? Hearing none, can we go to the next slide, please?
Yeah, there's a question.
Oh, was there? Oh, I did not see that raised hand. Go ahead, please.
So I just want to bring this up. I noticed in the last few years that a lot of the questions that we're getting are on our unit costs in staffing and labor. And I just want to make sure that compliance and division is very aware that in the government we have step increases and raises, right? So I always get the question back that comes back and they're questioning why something is like 2 or 3% more than it was before. Well, if you get somebody that goes from a step 9 to a step 11, or maybe one of the larger step increases, from GS9 to a GS11 or a step 3 to a step 5, those can be significant raises in costs versus the year before. We go with a current listing of what the labor charge is for staff. And when you question those, and then we try to put that in there, that these are current labor charges, how do you want us to address that in the notes? That this person received a pay grade increase, or how do we address that without, you guys realizing what you're asking for us?
Yeah, thanks for the question. That's a really good question because that's a very, very common comment back from division to our applicants. And this is where when you're submitting that initial application, it really helps us by kind of beating us to the punch to absolutely in your notes explain literally the increase was because of a step increase. Any other extenuating factors, I think I've seen ones where some of the benefit information was now included this year where it wasn't in the past. So like literally act as if like we have no idea what the position means and why it's paid a certain amount if it's changed significantly, meaning more than 10 or 15% from the previous year. Just go ahead and like spell that out for us, and that really helps us. We likely will not have a comment, but if we do, that's exactly how you'd want to explain it.
All right. Can we put something with like on mine, I put in that the cost of labor is derived from a full burden cost derivative. Do I have to put in there, because I'm not always in the loop that says I know somebody got a step increase or got promoted from a GS9 to a GS11. We're not in management that are writing these things, and we don't have some of those some of that knowledge and acceptance. We do know that it changes because we get the full burden cost from our budget people.
Yeah.
They run a report. But no offense, I'm not management and I'm not involved in that person's upline or downline. So therefore I don't know why it is. I just know that I'm taking these based on a current full burden cost of that employee.
Ethan, I can address this one if you want.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So the comment that you're asking is usually we ask at the preliminary application. That's when we're at reviewing your first application that comes in. And where this comment usually comes from is it comes from when we compare this current application that you submitted at prelim in March to last year's final application. So we compare those final numbers, and the big number key for us, if it's over a certain percentage, and our baseline typically is 15%, but that could adjust depending on the year. But if it's over a certain percentage, then we're going to ask for clarification. And the reason why we do that is we are making sure that we're using grant funds appropriately, and the public's also reviewing these documents. And so we look at that as perspective. What would the public want to know? Why are these increases happening? So as long as it isn't over 15%, usually you're not going to comment. But in this situation, let's say it was Dave, and you got the comments asking for more clarification of why. That's when you would have to kind of follow up to see why that increase was, because that's what the review team is trying to figure out. Is this request needed? Is it because the ultimate thing that we had to deal with this year is our funding is decreasing. So last year 2 years ago, we had 36 million. This past year, we had 30 million. And so we had a cut line this year. So our goal is to try to make sure we're using everybody, our grant funds as best we can, and so that we can spread out what we have to as many projects as we can. So what is really needed for these projects to happen? So with the factual findings, you wouldn't have to put that information in now. We don't ask those kind of clarifying questions at this point. Usually it's quantities are off or notes are off in a little description, but those type of descriptions, those questions are very common at the prelim when you get your preliminary application.
So how kind of example, how would you like us to respond to that? Person had step increase. I mean, I have to review that, or government provided a 3% overall, raise, and those aspects that are coming through.
Yeah.
So I mean,
We've seen that.
you want that in the notes for each person that you have that comment, or does
Yes.
that work
So
in one?
Yeah, yeah.
it would be provided for each one. And usually what happens is we usually group comments together in regards to that have a similar thing. So it's kind of there. But yes, we would looking for justification for each one. And it's very brief to the point, just saying
Okay.
that it's a 3% increase, or just saying that it was a grade difference from last year. So previous position was a GS5, this year's a GS6, has a different there. But yeah, so it's a good question.
Okay.
And thing to note is this year's workshop are really going to focus on what you're asking, Dave. We really want to focus on how to write the applications, what comment questions that we're getting, that we're giving out, to try to help you guys in writing it so that you're not getting these questions that you have in the past.
And this is going to be an in-person workshop again, right?
Yeah, we are looking at doing a hybrid model. So we'll be this year, crossing our fingers, no floods or storms or anything to prevent us from doing it. But we are looking to do another hybrid this upcoming January. We're just finalizing the details, and hopefully in a couple weeks we will have information notice going out about it.
All right, cool. Next slide. Okay, so moving on to that second step I had mentioned, these are some additional items that would prevent our compliance team from completing the project agreement. Again, this step starts once we've received that initial tranche of information that we covered in the previous slide, step 1. What compliance is going to first confirm that the agencies are in good standing with the division. The division does have a list of agencies who are not in compliance with division regulations, or the division will review the Attorney General list of nonprofits for the status of the nonprofit. If any agency is not in good standing, we cannot complete the project agreement. Okay, staff will also review applicant changes made to the PCE and or the project description to ensure appropriate updates have been made to the final application. There may be some errors or some disagreement with numbers. If there are any of these errors or questions that we have in these areas, compliance member will certainly reach out to each grantee for additional clarification. We additionally verify that city, county, and district applicants have provided a governing body resolution. And so with that, I'd like to take a look real quick at what the resolution may look like. Once that comes up, thank you. So here we have the governing body resolution template. This can be found on the division website under the regulations appendix. It's basically everything you would need to tell us. The governing body resolution must contain certain statements, and most importantly, it says that your agency can accept GCA funding. Very important. We've seen some resolutions that are very boilerplate, just a stamp of approval. That's not going to work for the G23 program cycle. It's important the agencies this year comply with the resolution statement requirements, and we can only accept those resolutions as specified. So please keep that in mind. Okay, we can go back to the slide now.
Hey, Ethan, one question for if a grantee is interested in doing one of these in perpetuity, so they're looking to go forward with it instead of making it just project specific to that year. Is that something that's an option?
You know what? That's absolutely an option. That's a good question. Yes, you just want to make sure your resolution is not stating, hey, we can accept funds for G23. You want to accept funds in perpetuity, or some statement to that effect that indicates, hey, we're good with the GCA from here on forward. Just be more broad in the way you describe that.
And if you have an agency that might need the copy of the project agreement for getting the governing body resolution, so is that something that we can give them at that time?
Yeah, that does happen. Obviously, nothing can be signed or executed, but if it's necessary to present to your council or whoever your governing folks are, yeah, we can absolutely provide a draft of the agreement as an attachment to your council item, so they can go ahead and stamp that and get that resolution filed. So yeah, good questions. All right, back to the slide. All right, cool. So for our nonprofit agencies, we'll need to receive a completed nonprofit certification as well. And this is another item. The certification can be found on, again, the division website under the regulations appendix. Go ahead and use that template if you need to. And lastly, we'll check for that all environmental requirements are fulfilled for applicants with ground disturbing activities as part of their project. If this requirement is applicable to your project, you obviously should know about this at this point, and you'd already be working with division resources staff directly to meet these requirements. These are things like the HMP, the SCP, ERDS, and CEQA. Keep in mind, as I think Sean had mentioned this, you're going to have a grant administrative site visit. We still may schedule an admin site visit, even if documents or verifications are still pending with staff. But however, you need to make sure your agency clears up any of these deficiencies, since the project agreement absolutely will not be signed and executed until all applicable requirements are met. And with that, any questions? And so far, next slide, please.
Oh, thanks, Ethan. I'll take it over from here. But yeah, this is going to be the last section. So thanks everybody for sticking with us this far. Yeah, so what's next? What this really is going to be basically what's next after the project agreement is fully executed. Again, just meeting it has been signed off by our grant manager over on this end, and also the authorized representative over there on your end. So diving right into it here, the first bullet point on the list here is you will begin the transition from working with our compliance team to your assigned grant administrator. And thanks, Dave, for raising your hand and calling this out. And I know Matt mentioned this earlier, but really what that transition looks like is until you receive that fully executed project agreement, your primary contact is going to be the compliance staff, your assigned compliance staff member. And after that execution timeframe, your primary contact is going to be switching over to your grant administrator. But in general, your grant administrator is going to be your primary day-to-day contact for everything for the project. Feel free to reach out to them after that project agreement is executed. They can help answer any questions, and really they're going to be your advocate to ensure your project is successful. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to them, because they're there to help and they want to see your project be successful.
So Josh, are you saying if it's not the process of getting a project agreement's not going that fast, are you saying I shouldn't reach out to my grant administrator to help nudge the compliance member to work faster to get things done?
We don't want that to happen yet. We want that separation there between tasks and duties, but yeah, until that project agreement is signed, we do want the contact to be the compliance member. But since you did ask, I'll say if it is moving along slowly, feel free to reach out to Matt. He is the supervisor and can help funnel those requests if it's needed. All right, so moving along here to administrative site visits. Ethan just mentioned that sometimes these can get held up if documents are pending, but really, if a draft project agreement is approved by division management, then we can go ahead and set those up, or the grant admins will. And the grant administrators typically reach out around like October to December to introduce themselves. And that's when they'll also set up those visits or get them scheduled. And that's if you don't know them already. If you haven't met your grant administrator, just kind of keep an eye out for an email during that time. Just one thing to add here too, especially with COVID, the administrative site visits switched basically 100% to virtual, with a lot of, I guess, hopefully changing back to normal. I know there's been spikes and stuff, but putting that aside, we are looking to try to do more in-person admin visits. We do recommend them. It's just so nice to get out from behind our computers. Even myself, I know a lot of the team members over here, we do like to get out into the field, and we work with a lot of different agencies throughout California. California is such a beautiful state, so it's nice to get out, but we do recommend them being in person if able. As far as the content, no need to really prepare anything other than questions. The grant administrators are going to have a detailed agenda. They'll pull up your project agreement, project cost estimate. They'll go over all the points on it. They'll go over kind of what they're looking for. So let's just say staff, for example. They'll talk about what they want to see as far as like staff time, hours, and all that stuff. So that'll be a good time to get a lot of those types of questions, issues out of the way, because if it's, you know, discussed early on, figured out, it's going to help alleviate a lot of potential problems down the road. Yeah, again, just a very high level overview of the project. So just a note too with the admin visits. A lot of the times it's just our grant admin and then your grant admin on the calls, but we do recommend a couple, maybe 2 to 3 people on your side, just because this information is spread. A lot of times it's relevant to multiple people. So it's good to just, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people on your end to be included on that call, just so they have opportunities to ask questions and receive all that information too. Next slide, please.
One person to recommend it, if you have a budget person that's doing all your billing and getting all your data collection, that's one to really have at the administrative site visit as a recommendation for us, because that's the one that's going to be submitting the specific documents that we're looking for. And it's great for them to just touch base to make sure they're on the same page of what that's going to look like.
Thanks, Matt. And now we will go over when you can submit your first payment request, also first advance. So before diving into these two kind of name of the game here, we do need that project agreement to be fully executed before you can submit your first payment request or advance. But with that said, after your project agreement is fully executed, your first payment request can be submitted as soon as you like. In general, our grantees typically submit them on like a regular cycle, so either like quarterly, biannual, or on an annual basis. If you are a new grantee, we do recommend submitting quarterly payment requests, at least to begin with. It can, on the surface, seem like 4 times as much work because you're doing 4 payment requests versus just 1 at the end of the project. But any types of issues that are caught within those first couple months can get basically alleviated with that first payment request, because you know, the grant administrator will go over the first payment request, fix any issues, and then everything else will be good, versus waiting the entire year, collecting everything, sending it in, and then having to go back and fix everything. And that can basically prolong it. So on the surface, quarterly might seem like it's more work, but a lot of times that's the way to go and it's less painful. So moving on to advances here. So your first advance can be submitted prior to the start of your project performance period. Just keep in mind that any costs that are associated with your project need to fall within that project performance period. So again, you can submit your advance before the project performance period. That's if your project agreement is fully executed, but those funds really can't be spent until the start of the project. So another thing here with advances is they can take a bit for us to process on this end. Basically, the advance gets submitted, we go over it, approve it or make comments. Kind of, there can be some back and forth conversation. We turn it into accounting. It goes to the SCO, State Controller's Office. So it can take like 6 weeks from the initial time you request that advance to actually receive the warrant or the check. So make sure to get those requests in early, especially if you need those funds to start the work. We don't want you to end up getting held up from starting your project just because you're awaiting funds. And that finishes it up. Actually, if you can do next slide, please. I believe we have a, oh, actually, there's more slides. I lied. Any questions?
Okay. Since we don't have any questions, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our compliance team for their exceptional effort today in creating this presentation. I'd like to also extend a heartfelt thank you to all of you who took this time to be with us today. We hope that you gained some valuable insight into our project agreement process.